Welcome back. The time is 11 minutes past 8 Central African time, and we're going to be kickstarting the show with what's very, very topical right now: immigration. It has become one of the most contested political issues here in South Africa, with the rising public frustration, mainly over unemployment, crime, and pressure on public services increasingly, according to others, being directed at foreign nationals. In recent weeks, a viral constitutional campaign that was linked to anti-immigration activism has gained quite a significant traction, especially online, because much of the discourse, much of the public focus and the conversation has been on calls for stricter immigration controls. And critics argue that that particular campaign, and I'm going to be bringing in Rebecca Davis now to give us more insight on it, but that particular campaign contains broader demands that could have far-reaching implications for civil society organizations, for constitutional rights and democratic freedoms. And all of this is happening as the debate around immigration is happening as the country is preparing for the local government elections, and immigration, I think we can all agree, is emerging as a very, very key political battleground. But to help us unpack all of it and to give us more insight on this campaign, its messaging and what it could mean for South Africa's constitutional democracy, we're joined by award-winning journalist and author Rebecca Davis. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you giving us your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure's all ours, and I want us to jump right into it. For our listeners who maybe have not been following the story, what exactly is this, I can say, viral constitutional campaign all about, and who's behind it? Rebecca, are you there?
This connection is a little bit weak, but I'm back on with you. I'm so sorry. I just missed that first question.
I just wanted to give us insight a bit, or maybe give our listeners insight who may not have followed, the story around this somewhat viral constitutional campaign. What exactly is it all about, and who's behind it?
Right. So there's a number of attempts underway, as you'll probably have seen, from people who believe that the best way to tackle the immigration tensions in South Africa at the moment is by editing the constitution rather than rewriting immigration policy. And one of the main things that these movements are pushing for is to rewrite the preamble of the constitution, which currently says South Africa belongs to all who live in it. And they want it to be rewritten to say South Africa belongs to basically only its lawful citizens. So there are a number of sort of campaigns like this doing the rounds. The political party Action SA has also made the same proposal, by the way. But there's one in particular called South Africans for Constitutional Reform, which I think has been more successful than any other in getting South Africans to lobby Parliament in terms of this particular constitutional amendment and others. And when you look at it, it seems to be, on the face of it, purely about, restricting services in South Africa to South African citizens, to making sure that South African citizens are the ones who benefit most from the South African economy. So far, so standard, basically, for these campaigns. But when you start digging a little deeper, you realize that there is another demand hidden within their sort of portfolio that people maybe aren't as aware of. And that is the demand that NGOs and NPOs be kind of put under control of the state in a much more robust fashion in order to make sure that what NGOs are doing aligns with the state's development mandate.
And I want to touch on exactly that. The fact that, outside of issues of immigration, NGOs are seemingly the target of this campaign. Why is that so significant? And also, from your observation, the role of NGOs in this particular discourse on immigration, how has it led, to some of these campaigns being directed at them?
So the NGOs have played a role, obviously, in the broader immigration discourse in South Africa In particular, the likes of the Helen Suzman Foundation, for instance, I'm thinking of, has been a sort of defender of Zimbabweans and the Zimbabwean extended workers permit. Not a defender, but they have several times approached the courts to ensure that the legal rights of Zimbabwean workers are being protected. So NGOs do have a role to play and have played a role in the immigration debate. But what this particular campaign is preoccupied on, it seems, in terms of its founder, who is a woman called Princey Mtombeni, is the specific NGOs who went to court in 2017 to prevent the Zuma era nuclear deal with Russia going ahead. Now, this nuclear deal, listeners will remember, would have cost South Africa an estimated 1 trillion rand and locked us into dependence on Russia for energy for decades. There were two particular NGOs which went to court to litigate against this deal, and that was Earthlife Africa and SAFCEI, which is an environment faith NGO. And they're the ones who got the deal chucked out on the grounds that the court agreed that there hadn't been sufficient public participation, that the deal had gone down in secrecy. Now, the person pushing for this particular campaign, which seems on the surface to be all about immigrants, is a nuclear energy advocate who for years and years has been arguing that that Zuma deal should have been allowed to go ahead, and that if it had, we wouldn't have had any of our load shedding issues in recent years. And but up front in public, she's not saying that. She's saying, what I'm worried about is the same thing you guys are worried about. I'm worried about foreign nationals getting access to blah 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 state services. But it's when you look at the other strand of her public sort of advocacy that you realize actually there's another thing in this for her, and that is that she has said over and over again NGOs should not be allowed to interfere in things like energy procurement. NGOs must sort of stay in their own lines. And here she is formalizing it even further in this sort of buried demand as part of her campaign that NGOs need to be, in fact, under the oversight of the state.
Very, very interesting, Rebecca. I want us to take a quick break, and we'll continue with this conversation right after this, especially, looking at, broader global trends where migrants and civil society groups are increasingly portrayed as obstacles to national interests, because I'm pretty sure this is not happening here in South Africa. Also, there are examples all across the world that we can maybe pick up on, and we'll do that right after this.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil, triple refined pure sunflower oil with every meal I make. Naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether I'm cooking, frying or baking, I know every dish will be a wholesome one. Sunfoil, now we're cooking.
Right now, over 150 million children around the world are orphaned, facing hunger, hardship, and uncertainty. With Islamic Relief's Orphan Sponsorship Program, you can provide a child with access to education, nutritious food, essential healthcare, and a safe home. Your sponsorship is not just support, it's hope, security, and a brighter future. Be the reason an orphan child smiles again. Sponsor an orphan today with Islamic Relief.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042 203 1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Are you banking with convenience, transparency, and flexibility? With Al Baraka Bank's transactional banking account, you can enjoy convenient everyday banking designed around your needs. Benefit from zero fees on point-of-sale transactions and manage your banking easily through Al Baraka's secure mobile banking app and internet banking platform. From everyday payments to managing your personal or business banking, Al Baraka makes banking simple, transparent, and convenient. Visit albaraka.co.za to learn more. Al Baraka, your partner bank. Al Baraka Bank Limited is an authorized financial services and credit provider.
Soweto, it's time to stand together for justice, peace, and solidarity. Join us for the annual Soweto Walk for Gaza, taking place on Saturday, the 20th of June at 7:30 a.m. The walk will begin at the historic Regina Mundi Church and proceed to the monumentous Dlamini Mosque, bringing together people of all faiths, backgrounds, and communities in a powerful show of unity and support. Bring your family, friends, and fellow residents as we walk together for a common cause. Let your voice be heard and your presence counted. That's the annual Soweto Walk for Gaza, Saturday, the 20th of June at 7:30 in the morning, starting at Regina Mundi Church and ending at Dlamini Mosque. Together we walk, together we stand, together we show solidarity.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
Welcome back. The time is 22 minutes past 8 Central African time, and we're having a really interesting conversation with award-winning journalist and author Rebecca Davis, and this is on a piece that she wrote regarding this viral campaign almost that is calling for constitutional changes, especially on immigration and also on the role of NGOs and civil society. Rebecca, thank you so much for staying with us. Before we went to that short break, I wanted to chat briefly on to what extent does this, reflect almost a broader global trend where migrants and civil society groups are increasingly portrayed as obstacles to national interest? Because I'm pretty sure this is not only a case here in South Africa, there are examples in other parts of the world too.
Possible to ignore the fact that one of the countries which has cracked down the hardest on NGOs because of this perceived issue that NGOs can, meddle within domestic politics is Russia, which is in 2022 as part of a new raft of constitutional amendments, including extending, the leadership term of Vladimir Putin, brought in this foreign influence regulations, which basically have seen to it that if you are an NGO, if you are some surveillance list, so that government can keep an eye on you, so government can keep an eye on your activities. And this is part of a sort of ever more repressive atmosphere within Russia towards NGOs and towards foreign organizations, which have seen a lot of them sort of pack up and leave in the end. In a South African context, obviously, that would be hugely problematic because what people forget, I think, often is that NGOs are there stepping in where government can't a lot of the time, particularly in terms of providing basic services to people, dealing with people who are victims of violence and people who have nowhere to sleep and people who don't have anything to eat. This idea that it's NGOs that are the problem in South Africa seems deeply problematic when the real issue, is so much wider. And in fact, they are often carrying out these pretty indispensable roles.
And as I mentioned in my intro, all of this is happening while the country is preparing for local government elections. How much do you think this conversation is going to be a feature? I know it's local government elections, but still, South Africans always find a way to mix and merge, national issues, international issues with local government issues. Do you see this being a feature where people might vote or not vote? Will it be on political parties and their messaging around the issue around immigration?
I think it's going to play a role, But it is true that local governments tend to attract a different type of voting in general. We know that the turnout is always a lot lower, and that it is here where South Africans do tend, more than in the general elections, to make decisions based on, who is picking up their rubbish outside their house and what municipality government can keep the lights on. So I think it will play a smaller role than if it was a general election, but I do think it will play a role. One of the things I've seen, for instance, is that one of the politicians who's emerged as consistently the most principled on the issue of foreigners and migrants is Julius Malema from the EFF. We know that is not, in fact, a very popular stance more widely. So I think there is every chance that someone like Malema and a party like the EFF might actually get punished in November for having taken a sort of much more welcoming to foreigners stance. And obviously there's something quite disturbing about that as well. But unfortunately, we're now in a situation where, a huge number of the parties lining up for the elections already have anti-foreigner policies, and not just fringe parties, major parties too. We've got Action SA, we've got MK, we've got ATM, we've got Patriotic Alliance. All these parties, to some degree, have adopted very, very skeptical of foreigner stances. And so, of course, it's in their interest to keep hyping up this moment until November, when they will hope to capitalize on it in the form of votes.
Interesting that, you outlined some political parties, and I think what's interesting would then be the question around the ANC. Where do you see them fitting in this discourse? Do you see them maybe changing the narrative around migration, considering the fact that they are literally, under a lot of pressure right now? Some say, they could be losing more key metros in these coming local government elections. Will they see an opportunity here to maybe leverage on the discourse?
It's tricky for the ANC because we have seen individual ANC ministers, politicians, etc., in the past make very anti-foreigner statements themselves. So we know that sentiment is alive and well within the ANC as well, to some degree. They also know that they have to be kind of the grown-ups in the room about this, because it is such a fraught situation. And we saw President Cyril Ramaphosa going on TV 2 Sundays ago to say, to appeal for calm, as always, and to say this is what we are proposing via our migration policy. So in a way, what the ANC has tried to do is just come in front of it to say, everything you're calling for, this is what is contained in this proposed government migrant policy reform. So there's really no reason for us to have to keep talking about changing the constitution. It's all in here, guys. So the question will be whether their proposals in terms of handling migration tensions will do enough to convince people that something is really being done in terms of taking their concerns seriously before something else kicks in. And that, of course, is this deadline that's been handed down by movements like March and March and by South Africans for Constitutional Reform, that illegally documented foreigners must leave the country by 30th June or else. The ANC is also very aware that or else is a very problematic thought, because we remember what happened 5 years ago in Durban, the July 2021 riots, and there are a lot of people in government who are concerned that what this is pushing towards currently is the same kind of episodes. Nobody can afford that right now.
Most definitely. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
There you go. Award-winning journalist and author Rebecca Davis helping us unpack a viral constitutional campaign that is generating intense debate around immigration, civil society, and the future of constitutional rights in South Africa. She wrote a wonderful piece on it on the Daily Maverick. I think you can head over to the website and check it out. And I think this is going to be an interesting conversation, especially as we head towards the 2026 local government elections. I think questions around migration, citizenship, governance, and democratic freedoms are likely to remain firmly in the spotlight. And I want to hear from you. If you are going to be voting, which you should be a non-negotiable. It is the local government elections, granted, but are you going to be looking at what political parties are saying on migration, their stance, how they're reacting to organizations like March and March? Are they in support of it? Are they anti sentiment of foreigners must leave and South Africa should be for South Africans. Which side of the fence are you on? And does the political party that you're going to be voting on, how much of a feature should that conversation be, even though it is the local government elections? Does it matter, or you only care about whether or not your roads are tarred, your councillor or your mayor is on the ground, they're doing their work, if they're burst pipes or there are cables that are stolen, they're quickly fixed, and the rubbish is being picked up, and all of these conversations around illegal migration for now, they are not a feature to you. They don't matter because these are local government elections, and this is just about simple bread and butter issues. Some people might argue that there is an intersection between migration and our communities and the ability for the government to deliver services. So at the end of the day, you can't remove one from the other. But others saying, well, that's more of a national issue. Maybe, when you go to the general elections, that's when you can take a look at how political parties are saying when it comes to migration and their stance. So engage with us, 0617660355. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with you after this.
Soweto, it's time to stand together for justice, peace, and solidarity. Join us for the annual Soweto Walk for Gaza, taking place on Saturday, the 20th of June at 7:30 a.m. The walk will begin at the historic Regina Mundi Church and proceed to the monumentous Dlamini Mosque, bringing together people of all faiths, backgrounds, and communities in a powerful show of unity and support. Bring your family, friends, and fellow residents as we walk together for a common cause. Let your voice be heard and your presence counted. That's the annual Soweto Walk for Gaza, Saturday, the 20th of June at 7:30 in the morning, starting at Regina Mundi Church and ending at Dlamini Mosque. Together we walk, together we stand, together we show solidarity.